I had some psychic experiences as far back as high school, and then got it validated in some interesting things that happened while I was at university. But I met my first teacher, a woman named Betty Bethards, when I came to California, and studied with Betty, and gradually, well, started doing readings in 1977. And in the midst of those readings, I noticed that my fingers physically, but energetically, they were tracking energy patterns in the clients, and that when I could get those energy patterns in the client to untangle, then all of a sudden they would have a breakthrough of clarity. They'd have an aha about the stuff we were talking about. So I sort of followed that lead. So on one hand, the energy inside of me taught me that I did energy work, and on the other hand, the clients in front of me taught me how. So it was sort of an ongoing process of, oh my gosh, I've got this knack. Isn't this interesting? How does this work? And I've studied with a number of different people along the way every time I saw somebody that did stuff that made sense to me. But the energy work itself came out of noticing it. In fact, it's embarrassing. One of the central parts of the work I teach, we call the live beam meditation, L-I-V-E, live beam meditation. And it's a practice of pulling a vertical energy beam from the center of the earth up through us into source, speeding it up until we glow. I found that, channeled that, saw that, discovered that, unfolded, whatever word. I found that in work with a client, and then followed it in work with clients and watched it do great stuff for them. And then it's sort of embarrassing because it was, as I recall, almost a year and a half or 2 years later before my brain kicked in and said, hey, this has been working really well for the clients. Maybe you should try it in your body. And from there, a whole series of energy work and the ability to track that and find it useful unfolded, including opening up my own world as well as clients. There's a lot of titles that get attached to my work, including practical mystic, medical intuitive, clairsentient. Etheric engineer kind of came along. My dad, I was raised to be an engineer. I actually have a degree in electrical engineering from Washington University at St. Louis. So I have a degree in electrical engineering from WashU. My dad was an engineer for his entire career. My brother was an engineer. I have an engineering degree. I was really raised to be an engineer. So I went through, my whole early part of my life was an engineering training from, just from how my dad thought. My dad met my mom in a math class in college, so it was what I was immersed in my household. As I moved into this more metaphysical sort of work, as I was describing with the energy work I do, as I moved into this metaphysical part of the work, I noticed that not everybody I saw in the world of metaphysics was necessarily real world results oriented. But the same thing could be true when I was in engineering. I noticed that not every physicist was real world results oriented either, but the engineers were. And so I noticed that I kind of had an engineering approach to what I did with the client work and what I did with my classes, my trainings, and my energy work. That the whole focus was untangling the tangles in the clients, regardless of how we went after that, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, all the same thing, different views. No matter how we went after it, my whole view was, let's get stuff untangled so that it works better. So etheric engineer sounded better than psychic repair guy. I use the word psychic and intuitive interchangeably, but I notice the popular world doesn't. I think of it as anything beyond sight, smell, taste, touch, sound. Anything beyond the first five has to be that sixth sense. And I kind of wind together all of the sixth sense parts, whether I call it intuitive or psychic. So there's some definitions to do, because sometimes the media gets confused into thinking that psychic has to do with precognitive. Psychic is psychic, precognitive is precognitive. To be precognitive, you have to be psychic, but to be psychic does not mean it's always future stuff. It's not always knowing stuff in the future. My first psychic experience that really logged in my head, I was in high school. And shortest version of the story is, I knew something about someone I just met that, well, actually I knew someone about their fiance, that there was no way for me to know. And we were working a summer job. It was when I was in school. It was a summer job on an assembly line where some interesting person who thought he was an efficiency expert thought that if people talked to each other while they were on an assembly line, that was inefficient, so we weren't allowed. But I remember getting up that morning after I'd woken in the middle of the night with a knowingness and writing a note to her and putting it in my pocket. And then when I got a chance, when she was at work, when I got a chance, I just gave her the note, which basically all I said was, if you need somebody to talk to, call me. I was a little cautious about admitting how much I thought I knew because I had no way to validate it. And sure enough, she called later that evening, and I found out that she had found out something about her fiance. Well, actually, he'd had a diagnosis that was dangerous, and he'd passed away. I knew it. I don't know if I knew it when he died or if I knew it when she found out, but we both knew that I knew that I'd known it before I talked to her. But the most interesting part of that for me was, I remember looking at the fact that I'd written the note before I saw her that day. And a part of my mind went, there, see, there's no other way you could have known that one, which when I look back on it tells me that for a long time I'd been having knowingnesses, just to invent a word, for a long time I'd been having knowingnesses that I'd written off to, well, maybe I knew that from some other book, or maybe I knew that from something they said, or maybe I read that from their body language. So that was a memorable moment because it underlined the whole experience of this really is real for me. Didn't tell me there was anything to do with it, but it did underline that it was real. Later, while I was in college, some person in the psych department that had to run some experiment just so they could prove that they could write data, posted that they were doing an experiment about intuition, and I signed up immediately, as did, I don't know, 100 or 200 people. And they broke us in small groups. And that was the first time that I had a chance to be doing something in a completely double-blind environment that I was not in control of at all, that involved people I'd never met and didn't know anything about, and that I absolutely validated that I had been able to see in my mind, color negative inverted, but I'd been able to see in my mind a picture that somebody I'd never met somewhere else in town was focused on at the same time. So that was the first solid validation, but it was much later that I found out there was anything to do with this stuff. I just found out that I had some of it. I don't have any other word for it but knack. And as an engineer, it wasn't immediately obvious that it was beneficial. In fact, I went through a long period of time. I remember, I will thank one friend of mine forever who had an argument with me. I started out in 77, I first started doing readings with a set of tarot cards called Morgan's Tarot, not Morgan Greer, Morgan Robbins. Fun, cute, lovely cards. I still think they're wonderful. And I remember that I would take them everywhere I went. And I'd do readings for anybody that would sit still long enough because it was fun for me and I was learning a lot from them. And then one friend of mine who'd had a reading someplace that we were asked me if he could have a reading. And I said, well, of course. And he said, but I'll only do that if you'll let me pay you. To which I said, oh, you don't have to pay me. You know, it's fun. I do it because I learned from it. He said, no, you don't get it. This was Thomas Dienema, bless his heart. He said, no, you don't get it. I value what I get from your readings. And if you won't let me pay you, I won't feel comfortable to ask you for something that I value. And that was kind of a breakthrough, that it was more than just sort of fun, interesting conversation and you know, something to do when you're shy, but that there really was a value in it. And then when I started doing more readings for people and doing readings for strangers, and then I started watching what shifted in them, it was fascinating. Because inside of me, prior to that conversation with Thomas, I really kind of looked at it as anybody could see what I see if they just took the time and paid attention. And it was quite a breakthrough for me to find out that no, this is really a knack, and it's a knack that was in me, and it was a knack that I had developed with all the studies and work I'd done, but that it was really a thing, and that there was a place in there where there was value to it. Ongoingly, what the value's been and what people get from it has shifted and changed. But the basic notion that, and we all do that with our own gifted areas. In our gifted areas, we tend to think that if we can do it easily, anybody could do it easily, and that, you know, anybody could do it if they just took the time and paid attention. And it turns out that those are the parts of ourselves we most want to look at. Any place in our mind that we would think of as, well, either everybody's awfully slow about this, or anybody could do it if they took the time and paid attention. So that was my, holy cow, this is real moment with Thomas. When I first started doing psychic fairs, I had to have a name for the business. And I took a look at what it is I felt I did. And what it is I felt I did was insights into life. And so that was the business name I picked up, was Life Insights, and we've carried it forward. But it really is true that my whole point in my work on myself and with clients is insights into opening out to all of us, opening out to all of what we are, while still being in a lifetime. I don't have a lot of interest in shifting so far up into my upper chakras that I'm busily trying to live in my spiritual self and dragging a body along behind. I've taken a lot of look at that one, and it just doesn't fit for what I teach or what I do. My whole view is to bring the whole thing integrated: sight, smell, taste, touch, sound, and that intuitive input, all of it, to bring all of it integrated, and to bring all the different parts of us that get lost along the way, to bring them all integrated so that we become joined, unified, opened, clear, whatever word you like. But Life Insights has all been about insights into life. And then it's branched off in a number of different areas. So we've gone into workshops, classes, individual sessions, now individual sessions online, teaching teachers, graduating teachers, and it also spawned out the Life Insights Live radio program. Life Insights Live, the radio show that I do. It broadcasts on a broadcast radio station here in San Francisco, KEST 1450 AM. It also streams live online through their website and our own, and then we archive it up on the website. But a couple years ago, and since we've continued, we have to still be winning, it got recognized as the longest running major market personal growth radio program in the nation. So on the upside, I'm proud of that. And on the downside, well, it says I'm not 20 anymore because I've been doing it that long. But we've been teaching on the air when people weren't teaching on the air. 33 years now, I think it is. Maybe it's 34. But I got right up there, and we've been teaching on the air everything from little mini workshops in an hour-long radio show to, for a period of time, we were able to do phone-in readings live on the air to demonstrate the intuitive factor of it. So we've been teaching on the air since longer than it was cool. And it's been kind of funny because this intuitive stuff, I was already out there, and then it sort of caught up with me. So I went from being way out in the outskirts to sort of out in the outskirts, but kind of in with the cool kids. For a new client, because I've got this kind of peculiar knack, I end up tracing energy patterns with my fingers and my hands. And then almost as if I've got long energy tendrils, I'm readjusting the tangles and the energy patterns on the client. The first time I work with a client, actually now I've gotten to where I made it solid. I've got little printed sheets that have a stick person on them that have the chakras laid out on the stick person. And what I do when I first work with a client is the first thing I do is I trace their energy pattern. I draw their energy pattern, sketch their energy pattern onto the stick figure just to give me a point of reference to work from. So I work out of the chakra system, but the first time I work with a client, I will track those energy patterns. Now, clients come to me with all sorts of formats. Some clients come with I have one client that she's a part of a she's a part of a Texas family-held business that has two brothers and one, so she's got two brothers and her. And there was a tendency for the brothers to think that it was nice that they let the girl play sometime, but they didn't really need to tell her stuff. And she would actually show up for sessions with a notebook full of questions about what was going on, what were they doing, what was the real intent, and all these various business decisions. So we would do, however long she'd booked, worth of just question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. Yeah, it works that way. Some clients come with questions, but in the typical session with a client, the first thing I'll do is I'll trace that energy pattern, and that both lets me get connected with them, because when I'm working with a client, I actually blend with the client. So I'm clairsentient based, which means I'm all feeling based, and I blend with the client so that I've got the client's point of view, my point of view, and however many thousands of other sessions worth of point of view that I've been inside of while I'm working with them. So I blend with them, so I see the world in their shoes. But the first thing I'll do is I'll track that energy pattern on the stick figure, and then that tells me a lot about them. So I will read out what's up in their life. Now, it's not unusual that it's not unusual that I'll do a quick read out of that, and then we might shift from that into they called me because they had questions. I mean, my favorite work is the people that call for a tune-up or before they're in crises, but yeah, well, frequently we don't go for help till we're already crunched. So I'll do that quick readout of what's up, and then we'll go into their questions, and it's sort of fun from my side of the equation to watch as their questions match up with what I already told them. It's just they hadn't seen the matchup when I first said that, but then when we get into going deeper into the individual questions, they get the reference that, oh yeah, that's what you were talking about. So at the same time that we talk, and at the same time that we talk, and it turns out that I'm verbally pretty good, while we're talking, at the same time I am untangling the places in their life where their energy patterns are tangled. Every place that we see an event in life that's tangled, it's an energy pattern tangled. Again, physical, mental, emotional, or energetic, they're all the same thing, just viewed from 4 different perspectives. So I'm in there working on the energy tangles at the same time that I'm talking to their mind about the places where stuff's stuck, and that I'm working with their emotions to get it to release. And in the midst of that, clients typically, even in a first session, have a series of breakthrough ahas where all of a sudden either the pressure of it lifts enough that they can find solutions, the distress that they were in lifts enough to where they can come back to center, or they really have a breakthrough where they see an option that they couldn't see before and that it comes on through. The last thing I try to do is give advice. What I really do is insights. It's all about insights, but if they can see, comprehend, grasp, feel, know, if they can recognize where they are from a slightly different angle, in a whole lot of cases that lets them break free and move into that aha place where they move forward. Some clients book with me once, some clients book with me once a year for their birthday present. Some clients, if they're in the middle of a major transformation, or if they're in a big place of spiritual growth and they want to really track it and accelerate it, some clients will work with me once a week. Everything in between.